This is the first of 5 short lectures, speed talks, that our visiting professor will take for our student of the workshop, but also for all the students of our school. This is a great occasion, even at such a difficult time, and we hope that the student will be able to take the opportunity to discuss with our guests. I will be very brief. I don't want to take time to Sebastián, even because I think all of us know Sebastián Irarrázaval work. He is a Chilean architect, and he belongs to that generation of Chilean architects who, after being trained at Pontificia Università Cattolica del Chile, they has brought Chilean contemporary architecture all over the world. For over 20 years, thanks to this group of architects, Chilean architecture is living a moment of worldwide recognition. The history of architecture of Chile, I believe, is strictly linked, strictly connected to the nature of the territory and to the political history of this place. These two features have influenced the Chilean architect, and especially this generation of architects from this place. But I think, or maybe I hope, that Sebastián will talk even about this. For us, Sebastián Irarrázaval is one of the most interesting architects from Chile, because in addition to the obvious value of his architecture, some of them will know, in recent years and on several occasions, he has been trying not only to talk about his architectures, but also to explain the reason of his architectures and the reason for his being an architect, maybe. And he has been doing this also and above all through his teaching activities. Sebastián, since 1994, he teaches at School of Architecture in Pontificia Università Cattolica del Chile, but he taught at MIT in Boston and at UAV in Venice. And he has been involved in several international workshops as our workshop. This aspect is not indifferent.
Tamam abicim.
Sorry. This aspect is not indifferent, is not irrelevant. I think that you need an idea of an architect to teach, and in my opinion, Sebastián has a precise idea of architecture. Before leaving the floor to Sebastián, I would like to underline only 3 words that I think describe very well his architecture, maybe. The first one is the tradition. The Sebastián architecture are deeply contemporary, international in a way, but show us a great knowledge of the tradition, of the construction techniques and the material of his country. The second word is construction. The structure that give order to the architecture by Irarrázaval is often the founding element and the starting point in a way. And the last word is clearness. Irarrázaval projects are clear in the sense that they are able to express in a clear way the reason of their construction. The house speak about the domestic space, the public buildings speak about the sense of collectivity, and so on. They seem like 3 important terms or 3 themes to think about. But I'm leaving the floor to Sebastián that will better talk about his work. Thank you, Sebastián. Open your microphone.
Yeah, here we are. Now, okay. I was saying that first of all, thank you very much, Claudia, for your for your interesting introduction and your kind words about my work. And also, I want to say thanks for having me again. I'm very interested. Today we have a very good starting with the students, so I'm very enthusiastic about that. Well, thanks to the school, and also would like to say to thanks Professor Massimo Ferrari for the contact that he did and that allowed me to be now with you. So I will start the presentation. It's never easy to do these things, even though I've done several presentations. It's never easy. We have to try to find some coherent. Always there is you are supposed to show new things and so on. And architecture is very slow. Buildings takes a long, so it's not that easy nowadays to have a brand new project. I have one. I will show you at the end a brand new project just finished. But today I will show you 6 projects, 3 ephemeral projects and 3 buildings. Let's say I will start now. Okay. Let me see if it works. Can you see the screen well?
Yes, yes, okay.
Yes. Okay. So as I said, I call this presentation ephemeral and permanent, 3 set build design and 3 buildings, because set design is something that I have done in the later years, something that I'm quite interested, and I afford let's say the set design or design of the ephemeral in the same way I afford all the projects, the architectural project without any difference. So for me, it's part of the same. First, I want to share very briefly. I don't want to go very deep in this, but it's a few visions that I have, let's say, realized with the years, and because always one is asked what is for you architecture, and it's never easy to respond that question, but I have a brief few ideas about what architecture at least is for me. I don't want to impose nothing, just to say what is for me and what it works for me. So I believe that architecture creates physical and spiritual shelters, and has a consequence. If we talk about the physical consequence of sheltering, is the idea of creating comfort. For me, that's very important. The idea of creating acoustic comfort, to create optical comfort, etc. So everything that is related, let's say, with the body. Architecture creates shelters for bodies, concrete bodies in concrete context, and so on. And the other one has to do with the idea of creating spiritual shelters, and this is not something cryptic, and it's very, for me, it's very simple. It has to do with, let's say, producing conditions where we feel, for instance, safe, and feeling safe has to do with archaic parts of our brain, and of course let's say the idea of spiritual shelter, how we feel in a space, of course, is historical as well. So it's a point that I hope will be clear when I show some examples. The other important idea for me is architecture creates bridges, also create relations within the building, between the people that inhabit that are inside those buildings. Also, of course, relation with the time, relation with the context, and so on. And the meaning arises from that. Let's say the value and meanings arises from that, from the success of those bridges. In that way, architecture is a sort of, if we can say, the sort of religious professional, probably one of the less one, in the sense that religion is about creating bridges, creating links. It's in the world, itself. So, and the other important point, and it's something that Claudia Tinassi raised, is the idea that architecture for me is construction charged with meaning. That for me is very important. And it's important because I believe that even though relations in architecture are very important, but the object is important too. So how we charge that object with meaning has to do with the construction, and the possibility of construction, of creating understanding, of creating joy, and therefore to create attachment. For me, this is probably has to do with the classic understanding of the idea of beauty, that beauty creates attachment, no? And the idea of beauty, understand, of course, as the good and the truth, creates attachment, and this is very important in the way, in this idea of link or bridge, how we relate with building, how public buildings are cared, etc. So the idea of attachment comes, for me, in relation with the quality of the object, not just the relations. Okay. Just to make example of this idea of architecture construction with meaning, this section of Gothic Cathedral expresses, makes us understand how, let's say, the forces moves from the upper level to the lower level, how the dynamic forces are transported to the ground. So we get, let's say, a sort of, there is a beauty here that have to do with understanding. Understanding is an old idea related to beauty raised by Aristotle. This idea of that understandings create joy. This is an example that I always show. This is idea, again, the idea of the sense of a sense of understanding related with the grammar of parts, where where there is economy, of course, of material that is very well expressed in this airplane, and also where the different materials are treated in a different way, placed where they need to be, and one can recognize, and probably the attach we feel with an image like that has to do with all these components. And the other, in relation with this idea of architecture seen as a construction with meaning, this is also a good example of other ideas related to architecture, like the idea of self-preservation. This idea that is inherent of all the species, of the world, human and non-human species. This idea of self-preservation, and how in this pagoda the architecture itself, the section, is the result of this need of preserving the wood out of the rain in this case. Well, and so this has to do with this vision very briefly, and also I wanted to share what are the or let's say the means or tools that during the years I have found useful for me. I have to stress that. And the means or tools to, let's say, to materialize those visions up to in relation with the commission that one receives or competition that one participates has to do with the idea of translation and repetitions. Translation is a very common way of creating something. It has been used for centuries, and has to do with the need to transport something from one, let's say, shore to the other. Of course, this is a metaphor of idea of translation. The translation in arts has the purpose of nurture and rejuvenate the disciplines. When you import things from other disciplines, for instance, thus has that creates youth and rejuvenate the discipline. On the other hand, the translation of the past, that's very important, tends to immunize things against death. For instance, if we think of the need to translate all literature, if we don't translate it, they will die, they will disappear. So the idea of translating something from an old language to a new one has that purpose to rejuvenate, and this is something that also happened in architecture. I will give you some examples. And the other importance for me of translation is the idea that puts the value of originality in crisis, and it's something that Rosalind Krauss in The Myth of the Avant-Garde, in that famous book, said very, very clear, no? This myth of the avant-garde being original is something that he put in crisis, as well as Adorno, for instance. So this idea that everything that is created, in everything that is created, we can find layering of all creations, no? So that always there is a sort of translation of something into the new. And we are always, as architects, always doing that. No? When we talk about reference, we are doing translation after all. No, we don't call it that way, but we do it that way. We translate even, of course, drawings to buildings. No, the book by Robin Evans talks about that famous book talks a lot about that. And the other important thing for me is that translation allows to build filiation, relations between things. No, what was there and is in another place, no? When we, let's say that we take a novel and transport or translate into a movie, there will be always, even though the result is a different creation, there is a filiation still between the original, let's say, and the latest creation. Yeah? So that has to do with the idea of translation. I don't know what is not moving. Yeah, well, this is we all know this example, no, of the theory of classical architecture comes out of the translation of wood architecture, very well known. Also in our discipline, the exercise of translation doing by Louis Kahn, where he passed from the Scottish castle to his famous organization between service and service parts, no, where he took away all the mass of the castles, and let's say the final is totally void of that mass, but keeps still the relationship between the parts. This is a very good example of that. Well, in relation with that, so that has to do with this idea of how to, let's say, how to start something, how to create the DNA of the projects out of this exercise of translation. And the other study had to do with repetition. For me, repetition is important because not only because it helps to have an economy in design that is very important. No, my studio is a very small studio, so any economy in design is very important. Also, of course, there is economy in production, but at the same time, what is very important is that it produces an economy in perception, reducing the perceptive stimulus. Because our brain recognizes patterns, that is something that is embedded in our mind, repetition produces a sort of safe, if we can call a safe way of inhabiting. That has nothing to do with this, the way of inhabiting in relation with surprise. This is quite the opposite, no? What is, let's say, the pleasure of the joy of an architecture of repetition comes out of the fulfilling of the expectations, like in music. No, music works, of course, always with repetition, and with the idea of expectation, either fulfilling your expectation or let's say prevailing those expectations to happen. That is something that is embedded in music very powerfully, and even, of course, as you know, it's been taken much further, this idea, by sort of minimal experience like Philip Glass, Michael Nyman, and so on. But the other also interesting idea about repetition is, since the form is reduced, no, to a sort of minimal expression, and there is this sort of repetition, the repetition produces, let's say, an awareness of the awareness of the materials, no, like in this work by Cornelis, no, this poet artist, no, where because of this repetition we start being aware of other aspects, not just about not about the form, but about the material that is in the surface of that forms. Example of this, I will not show this project. It's quite, I think, it's a bit known, but again, it's a house. It's a house that can be seen as the translation of a cone diagram into building, and where repetition is very strong and comes out of the use of containers in this case, no? And of course, one of the challenge of repetition, how to create variation, how to anchor the projects to the side, no? And this is achieved through the folding of these stripes as a way of anchoring these repetitions, no? In relation with the translation, an example of translation of the preterite of the old. Here below on the black-white picture is a rodeo, Chilean rodeo, then translate into this hotel chassis with these modular objects inside. I will not show this project. Or in this case, the translation of a diagram into a house and that diagram was, this is a two-way letter diagram was chosen because allow for a bigger perimeter and therefore to have light and sun coming to the house the entire day, and on the other hand to create a new or sort of more unfamiliar relationship with the landscape. No, the idea here is to be within and not in front the landscape. In relation with the translation from, let's say, some artistic origin is this play, this drama called Locutorio that I will show you. That is the translation, this photograph into set design. Or this is the latest project that we show. Is a new one where we did a long work trying to understand, to translate this engraving by Chillida. I will show you later at the end of the presentation. Well, let's go. So the work that we present is this one. It's a work in Matadero. This one that you saw, this pavilion, part of the Ephemeral 3 projects. This library as one of the 3 buildings, this theater, that is a project we just finished and is should be go to tender soon. And finally, a school for children with Down syndrome, autism, and epilepsy in the outskirts of Santiago. So this is the first of the 3. Check going with the time. Yeah, I think I'm going good. So this is a project done in Matadero. It's an exhibition of Chilean artists, a multidisciplinary exhibition. I was called to do the design of the exhibition and also to create a place for a theater director to do a work, and also for a musician that should serve for those 2 purposes. So the Matadero was the area where animals were killed in Madrid. So for me, this was the reference. No, this was the thing to translate, if you want. So what I proposed was to to translate that in a way that can reveal that past, of course, in an unfamiliar way, no? So this is the overall organization of the exhibition. On the right-hand side, the proper exhibition for the drama director and for the musician. And this is the director is a Chilean director, very good one. We have worked together in 2 plays. So I proposed these hanging televisions, no, where using analog technology that were in a way almost the lights were changing, not all at the same time. So there was in a way like animals, no, hanging there in his last days in a way. So I will show you a video of that. Well, this is the second ephemeral project. It's a stage design for this work called Locutorio by a Chilean drama player. Parlor is a place where two people go to talk. It's not clear in the work where they are. So I will write very briefly this that he explained quite well the play. Two characters meet in a parlor. In the original text, both are separated by a fence. One is intern and the other visits, but both believe to be the visit. They seem to be husband and wife, but towards the end, they accept to be inventing a non-existent past, so nobody who is who. Over time, memories become blurred or disappear. They can be also two old people with Alzheimer's, for instance. It's not clear in the text. The two are there and they don't want to be alone. That's the truth. But everything else is insecure. Loss of memory is a painful reality and gives way to fear of dementia. They are characters that love each other, who build a world with insecure pieces of memories, and who, even with doubts about who they are, seek each other's company. They want to leave that place, live in a small piece overlooking the market, do not need much more. Together, they will help each other. But they already said that 50 years ago, and it has worn out. All are certainties. So, having read the text, I went directly to see photographers of mostly surrealist photographers. And I saw 1,000. And finally, I arrived to this picture called La Cólera Divina by Gilbert Garzán, a surrealist photographer, where in a way gives some clues about how to deal with this work, in the sense that there are two persons there that see each other, but they cannot touch each other. And one can imagine that they possibly can touch each other through the reflections, no? So those uncertainties are enhanced by or underlined by the reflection of the glasses. So I had a look to this system that were commonly used by magicians like Houdini, for instance, or are used in the airports, no, that mirror, spy mirrors, no, that depending where the light is, are transparent or are reflective. So I use both, and I put the two characters in those cages, no, in a position where we can use those tricks in order to make them disappear, accentuate the uncertainties, and allow them even touch. So the staging transforms those uncertainties into reflection. One part is true and another is not. The actors are there, but we see them duplicated by their images. He and she are not now in a parlor, but in transparent, separate spaces. He's in the back, she turns her back on the one in the front. Deceptive reflection make us see them together. At one point, he hugs her, cares her. They seem to dance, and towards the end, when we think she sleeps, he affectionately covers her, but they are in separate places. So it's something that we see and we believe, but we know that they are separated. That's interesting what happened with this reflection. The improbable is accentuated when we see that from the movement of her skirt, 3 dancing figures emerge, and then, without our knowing how, they disappear. Some barely muscular parliaments suggest that words may fade, but the beauty of the scene remains. It was written by a critic of the world. So here we see these 2 pictures. The white floor help us to accentuate the light, and also the idea of being separated from the world. You know? They were extraordinary actors, so he took a lot of advantage of the object that we created, even using the chairs for reflecting the images. And this is the scene where the man disappeared and appeared these 3 women that are a sort of a reflection of herself, probably bulimia problems. And here is a small video in Spanish, so I apologize for that.
Nunca me había las 2 partes del victorioso mensaje. ¿Tú me quieres hacer creer que no estoy loca? ¿Es eso? Pero si te crees nada, tú solamente vienes a verte, a amarte. Nunca te lo diré. Los niños en casa. Tú nunca me has mentido. Te amo a veces, pero
Well, the third ephemeral project is a pavilion that was a commission done by the director of the School of Architecture to create something to celebrate the 100 years of the school of 120 years of the School of Architecture of our school, and this celebratory object or whatever, I was free to decide what to do, was supposed to be in Santiago. This is a picture of Santiago City, the capital of Chile, and also in Valparaiso. So therefore needs to be something that should be ensemble and dissemble. No? So the first place was the campus where I teach. This is the campus of the Catholic University, an old hacienda, very beautiful place in sort of close to downtown, but a bit far from it. So what I proposed was a sort of monument, but ephemeral monument, so it needs to be dismantled, and a monument that is the result of let's say, translating a beach chair into this monumentum, no? So it's a beach chair transformed, changed in the scale, but still behaving like a beach chair, no? That through the repetition will create a larger structure, more stable, this unit can be moved by the students, and finally create this system that reminds of the Chilean rodeos, and through, as a result of this structure of the need, or let's say, to make a resistant form, a form that resists not because of the amount of material, but because of the form, it creates buttresses that become also spaces, no? Like in the Gothic cathedral, what is outside the main nave still is a space, no? Sometimes those spaces are much more interesting than what having inside, no? So and was covered by this balloon. So finally, it's inflatable balloon that can last for a year. I mean, consumes very few energy. And created finally the biggest building in the campus for the time that remained there. So you can see this Buttress space where an exhibition was placed there to celebrate the 120 years of the school, and at the center a space for meeting was considered, and the shape and the form of the structure underlined that collective nature of the inner space. No? Here we are seeing both places. The left-hand side is part of the campus, and the right-hand side is in a ruined building in Valparaiso. We are seeing he's in the campus, and here in Valparaiso. I have to say that the project fit much better in Valparaiso because of the condition of the buttresses that were there retaining the ruined walls that you will see later. And also, I like it very much. It reminds also very much of that idea of a monumentum like Buleo, etc. No? Here you can see in the section the steel buttresses of the wall and the timber buttresses of the pavilion. No? We're seeing now the process of construction. And here is finished. It's quite big. I mean, the picture doesn't show the size very well, but it's very big actually. And here is in the school for that celebration. What was a bit before the celebration, a few hours before. So it's totally self-standing, no? That's interesting. That's because of the shape. I like this picture very much because it shows, no, these retaining elements, no, working with the form and not the amount of material. Well, the second of the third last project is this. Sorry, the first of the three buildings, let's say, is this library in Constitución. It's a project done in the let's say the forest area, where the forest area of Chile, you know, we produces copper, fruits, fruits and pine. That's our main sources of income of the country, and this area is where there is a lot of concentration of forest. No? And this city suffered a lot after an earthquake and tsunami that covered the city, destroyed and killed a lot of people. And the project is part of the reconstruction of the city. This image is of the church just beside where the project is. And there was a general plan done by Elemental where this was one of the buildings. They invited me to do this. When I went to the site, I saw a lot of these places where timber is produced and is dry in that way, and I thought it was a very interesting reference to use, and also realized that not just forests were there, but also people that know very well how to deal and how to build with timber. No? Let's say there was a concentration of very well crafted workforce. Again, those the places that commonly seen around that I wanted to transport to the project. So this is construction where you can see a combination of, let's say, a modular structure, prefab structure, infilled by crafted elements, no? That creates this sort of musical instrument, if you want. That's very, timber, as you know, has a very good, let's say, for avoiding echoes and so on. So for the library, it worked very well, the material, not just because there was a lot of production of wood, but was important in terms of creating this shelter, no? That we mentioned at the beginning. And also for me, it was important that a public building, more than where, let's say, public spaces are a bit left over, no, are not so well treated, at least in our countries. But to see how buildings, let's say during the Renaissance, not only produce shelter inside them, but also outside them. So for me, it was a good example to translate, to transport, to import into the building. So as you will see, it's placed in front of a square with trees. It's not a dry square. And the library is organized in 3 areas that are accentuated or governed by these 3 names, as you see in the section below. And also it is important to mention, to underline that the section not only, let's say, govern, accentuate, or underline 3 areas, but at the same time creates a huge perimeter that allows the light to come during the whole day from different angles. Therefore, to create a proper space for reading where the light is totally balanced. No? Another important thing to mention here is that section creates a sort of double layering that protects, like in a way, like in the pagoda, not exactly that way. It protects the sun from coming directly into the inner parts. Maybe that isometric shows better or what I'm saying. No, there is a sort of inner membrane that is protected from the direct sun that is semi-transparent. And also you can see in this section that the main plane of the library is up 1.60 meters from street level, and that has to do with creating let's say, a sort of safe condition. It's not a real safe condition, but it's a sort of mental or where, because in order to abandon ourselves to the reading experience, we have to feel safe, and so that safeness comes out of the control, even more than in a place that was flooded by a tsunami, no, just 1 year ago. I mean, this sort of social trauma still remains there, and of course at an unconscious level, but it's important to deal with that, no? Even though things that are not rationally expressed, but I think there are things or conditions that are still there. And in relation with this idea of building becoming not just spaces for sheltering people inside but also outside, we propose these 3 big windows to stay, to sit, and also to show books, and also to tell, because building also in a way are signs, they speak, that pedestrians are welcome to come in. So this is an institution that wants people to, of course, to come in. It's part of a foundation that promotes reading habits among people not well trained in reading. No? And this is a section that shows that double surfaces, you know, that protect the inner membrane. We created these furnitures inside because it's just, as we will see in the picture, one single space where there are micro spaces that create the proper conditions for reading. I will speed up a bit. So now we'll start seeing a picture of the library. We will start getting inside. Those are the big windows for showing new arrivals and also for staying. As you see here, also this is in front of the square. That is, of course, a social gathering space. This is a small town. Again, like in the pavilion, how the forces are working there, or the potential efforts of an earthquake. We are a country full of earthquakes, are, let's say, expressed in the form. So it's something that one easily can understand. and there is, as I said at the beginning, or it is expected to create a sort of attachment after this understanding of how things work. All the colors were chosen by us, and the idea behind was to create this filiation with the square in front. So these are the color of the furniture are the colors that you can find easily in the trees, in the leaves in front. And also we put these domestic lights in order to challenge the idea of a library as a very serious institution and create this filiation with the domestic rather than with the institutional. Well, this is a theater done for the same foundation, charity. I don't know if better the name in English, charity. They because of this library was quite successful in terms of people liking the project. So we were invited to do a theater, and we tried to take further ideas in the library, like the shape as a result of the effort, and also of the need to survival of the building, let's say to protect itself from the weathering. Also it's a building done in timber, and also appears again, we see the idea of repetition. There are three elements that are repeated. This is part of course, of the understanding or how to appreciate big shapes, no? Or better appreciate big shapes. It's a small town in a valley. We go quickly. As you know, we don't have many reference. We have a tradition of modern architecture, some old things that have disappeared because of the earthquake. So there is no many, fortunately, we can say, or not, depend where to have a look, no? What things to take. But we have a great culture of agriculture, production, and elements related with that. So beside the site, again, is part also of the forest area. We can find these silos are the only, let's say, monuments or things that comes out of the familiar. And on the side there were these, they were no longer there, but I found this picture of these water tanks that I thought, what if just doing a first photo montage to trying to find the DNA of the project, if we repeated 3 times like in a library, but instead of being 3 names, there are 3 parts of the program. One for the foyer, second one for I don't know the name in English, for the gallery, let's say, and the other the scenario. And we start doing this or trying to reuse parts that have been using for the pavilion that were finally not used like this, no? Where the shape helps to stabilize the form, and where in the top of the structure it's open up in order to protect itself from the rain. So we started doing this pre-concept drawing where we start seeing the 3 parts. So it's a big program that because it's subdivided can be apprehended better, no? And also create information, create this understanding, no, of the 3 parts. Here we're seeing a section. You are seeing then this the section that has to do with the need to protect the wood from the rain, like in that pagoda. And here we're seeing the plan, the three main area. I have to say that they can work also separately. There are sliding door that allows for use, let's say, and there are retractable seats, so therefore the places can have multiple uses. Here we see isometric sections where can be seen easily the 3 parts, where the foyer is on the extreme left and the scenario in the extreme right. some pictures I have to run. This is the foyer. Again, like in the airplane, no, the elements are differentiated, steel is treated, painted differently. One of the problems with the wood is let's say, is how it needs to be protected when it comes to the ground. That's why the pillars are pillars formed out of concrete on the base and then wood in the upper part. No. So it is always said that timber building needs hat and shoes. This is done with CLT, that are those cross-laminated panels that probably you know, laminated timber. That is it's a technology not still well used here. I think you have better example. And this is the final project. Was just finished. We took pictures very recently. Unfortunately, there are no people there because of the pandemic. The building is not being used already. That's a pity because it's a building where people are very important, where children are very important. It is in Talagante. It's a city 1 hour far from Santiago. Let's say it's a very, very poor city where there's a lot of vulnerable people living there. And this center is called Luis Undurraga Stimulation Center. Is for children, vulnerable children with different capacities like Down syndrome, autism, epilepsy. And we thought that a way of dealing with that in the context of caring and taking care of children in a, let's say, in a very dangerous neighborhood with drug dealers around and so on. So we thought that the proper solution was to create a sort of citadel where they can, when they get inside, they are totally free to move around. So we thought the building, on the one hand, should protect, and on the other hand, when they are children protected, they should promote freedom, no? And therefore use also the building for stimulating condition. This will have to do with the criminality that is around the site, very, very close to the site, just in the boundaries of the site. So the exercise in terms of this idea of the translation, I have I've always been fascinated by the work of the Basque artist Chillida, and he does sculpture, but mostly these engravings, where he's quite inspired by the ports in the Basque country. And so I started trying to transform it, let's say, this idea of a very strict frame that reminds this idea of boundary, frontier, with a very, let's say, open, let's say, interior, no, where one can discover things, where one can be lost or can have surprise encounter. So we started with this exercise. Of course, it's a long, very long exercise trying to arrive to that shape, because architecture needs, of course, needs to be economic, needs to be more done a bit easily, because architecture is sometimes very expensive. When you make things complicated, it becomes much more expensive. So this was for a charity, so they didn't have that much money. So well, there was a long process of going from the, let's say, from the engraving to the final project. We start with this simple exercise, picking up one of, I'm showing just one, but one of many, and see what happened when we start extruding them, trying to find what were the rules behind. And the rules, in this case, were that let's say the boy and the fields have the same dimension, more or less the same dimensions. Well, these are previous images of what we thought we could achieve. So here we can recognize the border that create this enclosure, and then this more labyrinthine interior where coexist the different program with two towers connected, one with the church and one with administration, that are focal points for recognition and orientation inside the building. We tried different materials. Once we were thinking in brick, but was finally very, very expensive because the construction is quite industrialized in Santiago city, at least. So this is a very narrow and long country, and the construction change along the country and affect cost. So it's very important to be aware of what is at hand. So here you are seeing the project placed on the side. What you see at the bottom of the picture was just is called taken land, informal habitation. On the right, on the left-hand side, there's a lot of drug dealing around and so on. So, but for some reason, the building, even though has not been used yet, is very more or less well cared, because there are some children there that live in the neighborhood where they are attending. So the organization looks complex, but it's very easy. It's a sort of organized around clusters, no? And let's say there are children that have much problem than others, and those ones are very close to a swimming pool. And we have an administration on the right-hand side, and then classrooms and laboratories, well, as you see, a play field and a swimming pool. And everything is connected by a corridor that creates the frontier with the neighborhood. And also you can move more freely in between those spaces. As you see, every room is isolated from the other, and this creates, or as a result of this great perimeter, they're quite well isolated in terms of noise, one classroom from the other one. No? So here I want to show how the fragment of the plan. Doesn't want to move. Here you are. Sorry, back. So this is the plan. Here we are seeing two of the corridors, and it's like a comb scheme, no, where these corridors penetrates into the clusters. And the other, let's say, advantage of having these isolated elements is that the light, or from within the corridor, you can have light and view of the outside. At the same time, of course, you can enter through the exterior into the interiors. No? So here on the right-hand side is the administration with this tower for a mural. The other tower is for a church. So here we are start seeing pictures of the inside. Sorry, that was it first. This is the only drawing that we have after, let's say, 1 year. So for a white building, it's a lot to say in that context. So this is the corridor. You say it's activated by the light with the tower. That is the tower of a church. This is the area of the swimming pool. This is the tower of the church inside. I mean, and the other thing is that every element is the same. So there is a repetition, even though it doesn't look like, but they're extremely the same. This is the same, has the same shape of the classroom. What makes the difference is that it has this membrane on the front and connected the tower, but it's exactly the same shape of the classrooms. And here we will enter in the administration zone. There is a mural there that is not there still, but should be. This is the back where for the teacher, because the teachers are, when I did this, I asked what I have to take in consideration. And I had prejudices in relation that I was supposed to make everything very easy for the student. They say, no, there's no need, because they will finally need to go to the city, to work and to take the metro, the metro, and etc. But teachers here are very stressed, so they need a sort of oasis, sometime to rest. So the administration, that's why the administration has this secondary membrane that encloses the area. No? And these are the more, let's say, freely path that contrast with the straight corridors, no? Where this is interesting because the rooms see each other. So there is there's always an awareness of what's going on in the other classroom, and this is very important because not only cameras are placed everywhere here, because children need to be protected from other children and sometimes even from the teachers. And these are the kind of spaces in between. I think that's me, the only human being there. And I finish with this picture. So, thank you very much for your attention. We are 10 minutes past, but I don't know if there is any question I can answer.
Thank you.
I'm trying to find where to stop sharing, but I don't know where.
Okay. Okay.
Can you do it for me or no? Can you stop sharing? I don't know how to do it.
Yeah. Thank you, Sebastian, for this lecture. So clear, but also so deep. And I think maybe we still have a little time for any question or comments. Maybe if Camillo wants to add something, or Massimo, Domenico. Massimo?
I don't know if Camillo wants to ask something on tell with Sebastian.
No?
No, fine. Everything's clear. No, too late. Don't worry.
Yeah, no.
It's too late. Some student or professor.
I will ask a question to Sebastian. Hi, Sebastian. This is Roberto speaking. Hi. How are you doing? Yes, it's something that came clearly through. Maybe you can say something about. You've been saying that you are quite, let's say, following some repetitions in you. You are interested in repetitions and how to kind of pursue that, but also to kind of let it change connotations. And I was wondering, looking at a number of things that you've been showing tonight, I see, particularly in the sections, that there are in many projects there is a tendency of seeing three compartments, three elements that are preponderant ones, that are the elements that are coming forward. And yes. I was wondering if it happens to be because of the proportion of the sizes of the existing situation that you're dealing with, of the spaces that you want to create, or there is something that is also it's on an upper level, something that repeatedly let's say interested you, these three elements. I mean, you can see very clearly in a number of projects. So I'm sure you have seen that yourself. So maybe you can show us the way there.
No, thank you very much for your question. It's a very interesting question. I think it have to do with, I have to say that I first started working with containers a long time ago, first with an exhibition, and realized, and also I liked music very much. So, and I realized the strength of repetition, of course. And I'm not responding directly to the question, but just first to see, because I thought that it produces something out of the expectation, no? That this what I say are about fulfilling expectations. But in relation with the number and why 3 and not 4 or 5, etc. I have to say that I did that library, and I thought that was important to create this understanding, no, and to create this understanding and be able to count. And it's very simple stuff, but I read Aristotle about beauty, and he said part of beauty have to do with understanding and also with be able to count, no, to count. Let's say with a number, no, and yes, you can count until 5. More than 5 is something that you not recognize, but yes, but 3 at least is the let's say the minimum to repeat, no? If there is 2, I don't 2 is not repetition, no? There is other story around. Start having symmetries and so on, but repetition, the minimum is I think is number 3, and I think in the library it work well in that sense. Probably was not big enough, and the theater was extremely big and also placed in a context that I couldn't show here, with a lot of small houses, very domestic, let's say, context. And I thought in order let's say the big form to be apprehended, I needed to reduce it, you know, to reduce it in 3 parts, and also was connected with the program itself, with 3 parts recognizable of the program. So in that case, it had to do with reducing the impact of the object out of fragmenting it, and on the other hand, had to do with creating understanding of the program, no, as a way of creating attachment, no, to public buildings and so on. I don't know if I answered your question.
Oh no, it's something that let's say showed us the way about the numbers and the repetitions indeed, but also some other features that are, let's say, puzzling you when you proceed, when you think about the project. So thanks a lot.
No, thanks for your question. For some reason, I cannot. I don't know if you are seeing me, but I don't know how to turn my camera on. So I'm a bit missed here with the Microsoft Teams.
I can see you very well. I mean, that's no problem at all. Yes, no problem. Yeah.
Okay.
If there are no other questions, let's close this first talk. Many thanks to Sebastián.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me here.
Yes. And I remind you that the next speed talk will be on Monday with Donatella Fioretti. And thank you. Thank you at all.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Ciao. Ciao.
Thanks.